Silent competition is when someone is comparing themselves to you internally, feels threatened, inferior, or destabilized by something about you, and cannot admit that to themselves, much less to you. So instead of open rivalry, which at least has honesty, it goes underground. It turns into subtle withholding, passive aggressiveness, one upmanship that you didn't sign up for, and weird energy shifts you can feel but you can't point to. You're just existing, and they're running a whole internal leaderboard you didn't consent to. People who don't believe in competition often become the measuring stick for people who do. For me personally, I tend to be authentic instead of strategic, share insight instead of hoarding it, show depth without trying to dominate, and I don't scramble for approval or hierarchy. To someone whose self-worth is built on ranking, that's destabilizing as hell. Because if you're not trying to win, then what exactly are they losing to? Answer: themselves. It's about scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset, ego versus self-trust, performance identity versus intrinsic identity. They're playing games against an opponent that doesn't technically exist since you never agreed to play them in the first place, right? When someone is smiling but sizing you up, supporting you but resenting you, friendly but internally comparing, your nervous system feels that something is off because you're perceptive, not paranoid. And that shit creates a lot of background static. It's actually very draining. Therefore, I prefer to opt out of a dysfunctional economy of worth. Silent competition is not driven by confidence, it's driven by identity fragility. The person isn't trying to beat you, they're trying to stabilize themselves in your presence. Something about you activates a fault line in them. You're authentic when they're curated, you're grounded where they're performative, you're internally referenced where they're externally validated. Your existence threatens the story they tell themselves about who they are. So the motivation becomes, if I can feel above you, equal to you, or justified against you, I don't have to feel what you're triggering in me. Silent competition protects the other person from shame, inadequacy, grief over unrealized potential, the terror of being ordinary, or the fear that they're living a life that doesn't fit who they actually are. Not because you cause those feelings, because you expose them without trying to, just by being who you authentically are. So instead of self-reflection, they project, they externalize. Competition becomes an emotional anesthetic. So they're borrowing regulation instead of building it, and by silently comparing, they get a quick dopamine hit if they feel ahead of you in some way, a sense of order if they can rank you, and relief from ambiguity, well, at least I know where I stand, type situation. It's the emotional equivalent of gripping the steering wheel tighter instead of learning how to drive properly. Many people don't know who they are without contrast, so they use you as a mirror they can distort, a benchmark they can quietly move, a reference point for their self-story. Some examples of this: I may not be fulfilled, but at least I'm more successful than her. I may not be authentic, but at least I'm more disciplined than her. They gain narrative stability, even if it's built on comparison rather than truth. If they're busy tracking you, they don't have to face their own stagnation, their own envy, their own misalignment, and their own unhealed wounds. Silent competition keeps their gaze outward. Your presence becomes a convenient distraction from their own becoming. Open competition requires vulnerability. Collaboration requires humility. Silent competition requires neither. They get to feel superior without confrontation, feel justified without accountability, and feel in control without actually changing anything. It's power cosplay. No stakes, no growth, no exposure. Silent competition doesn't happen with people who are obviously domineering or are aggressively competitive or are playing this same status games. It happens with people who aren't trying to win anything, aren't scrambling for position, aren't asking for permission to just exist, aren't hiding who they are. These are the people who are targeted more often than not because their non attachment to hierarchy is destabilizing. Because if you're not trying to dominate, then dominance stops working as a control strategy. People competing with you want you to dim yourself so they can relax, compete back so they feel validated, seek their approval so the hierarchy locks in, or fail so the tension resolves. Either way. Silent competition isn't about winning against someone else. It's about avoiding the person they would have to face once they stop comparing.